Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Yamaha HS7s. Alright, cool. So, let's start off. The Yamaha HS7s, they are the Snow White edition, and they are a bit tatty because I bought them secondhand from a store at a very good price of, I think, when we convert it, it's about roughly $200 to $250 for the pair. So that's how rough they are. So they are rough. You can probably see it on the B-roll that I've done, that they are quite rough. This channel does not go into details about the driver units and speakers and do charts and tests. Pointless tests in my opinion of sound comparisons. I just talk about how I use them and what my usage experience with the product is. I'll start off with the setup. The setup is actually quite difficult because the tweeter above the top end is very bright and it requires sort of, I wouldn't say pinpoint accuracy, but it's not very wide. Once I set it up correctly and I got all the distance correct and everything sort of down the middle, found the sweet spot, the sound stage that the tweeters produced was quite good. But setup was difficult, and I'm gonna go into it some more. So the first thing that you notice when you plug in the speakers, it is the top end. The top end is very crisp, clear, very precise. It's like a sharp knife. Sometimes I would go into saying that it's a little bit too pronounced. Like the first thing that you notice plugging these speakers is that top end. That the top end is clear, but I think that's just because it's so well reproduced. There's lots of fine detail that you can pick up with these speakers, to the point where I could say it's a little bit harsh. After listening to it for about an hour or two, it becomes very tiring. So this is not an easy listening speaker for sure. And I'm saying it harsh, but it's not harsh. It's just because there's detail, there's pronunciation and detail in the tweeter. So that's why it sort of will tire you out if you listen to it for a longer period of time. If you go around the back of the speaker, there are some adjustments here that you can actually do, and if that top end is a little bit too high, like I said, you can trim it down. So you've got high trim is plus 2 decibels, 0 and minus 2 decibels. XLR input jack, large jack, and then you've got a little volume gain knob that you have at the back. Mid-range is clear, pronounced, voices are produced very well. Again, with that top end, you can hear all the sibilant noises that come out of the voices very well, and you can adjust them correctly because how clear the tweeter is on top. So mixing voice and vocals is very easy to do on this speaker to check what's happening in your mix. So the bottom end, again, I'll go back to the setup because we're talking about the setup. The setup of the low end is again very, very difficult because it's not that I mean, it's difficult enough to you know, it's not just, you know, placing them on your desk like the PreSonus behind me over there. I just placed them, sort of got the sweet spot right, and they played well, and that's because of the front firing port. The port on these speakers is actually on the back over there, and if you set them up a little bit too close to the wall, they will sound a little bit boomy, I would say, and they will muddy up your bass mix. Because I do tech house and house music, all the tracks need that sort of bottom end to be clear and crisp, and I need to hear what I'm doing. And bass response and bass is really important to me. Whilst doing the track, and you sort of obviously you mix and master whilst you're doing it, when you turn everything else off and you just listen to, for example, the kick and the bass, which is what I usually do to check the levels and to see how they blend together. I hear from this speaker, from this side and the other speaker, because they are sold individually as separates, port chuffing. Tons of port chuffing, and I can hear the woofers rattling inside. I can definitely hear that, and that is at higher volume. So if you have a thump going on, and you need to hear it, like you want to imagine your track being played in a club or something like that, so you turn up the volume, obviously. With the PreSonus, it's not a problem at all. Even though the ports are front facing, there is absolutely no chuffing or sound rattling coming from the woofers at all. So in terms of checking my lows and bass lines and the kick, I don't think that's the speaker for you. I don't know about the HS8s. The HS8s have a larger woofer. It's an 8-inch woofer. The port is still at the back. I don't know if that will chuff at louder volumes, but this speaker definitely chuffs at louder volumes. Low end, again, I'll talk about the low end some more, because the low end is what sort of but lacks in this speaker. It is a mid-sized speaker, so it's not the smallest of speakers to check your sound. It is the 6.5-inch woofer on there. It still produces a lot of bass, clear bass, good bass, but again, placement plays a big factor on it. And then if you crank up the volume, if you're doing house tracks, tech house tracks, probably rap and hip hop songs as well, if you're into that sort of thumping music where it requires lots of bass, lots of thumps, lots of kicks, you will not be happy with just having this speakers to check your mixes. You will need a larger speaker, 100%. 6.5-inch is not enough to check that low end. But what this speaker does very well is finalizing your track. So once you've done all the music creativity speaker, this speaker is a final sort of check speaker of where your levels sit, where your low end sits. But so it's a final check, sort of a mastering speaker, but not a music making speaker, if you understand where I'm going with this. So the PreSonus are very easy listening, so if you make music on them, you have a good platform to then go onto these, something, I don't know if it's a higher level, because of the tweeters that I can hear. I know I can hear a little bit more from the tweeters than I can hear from the PreSonus. I know the PreSonus have got dials, to just individual dials on the back to adjust that tweeter, but I think it's unnatural if you do the gains. It's you're telling the speaker to do something where it's not meant to do. So I think if any sort of gain is imposed on the speaker, so the flat line level of what the production line has done to the speaker, it should sit there, and I think that's where the speaker is best heard. If you start tweaking those EQs, you're making the speaker do something that a little bit more, so it's pushing it, so it's not a natural sort of a sound. Whereas this one, everything at 0, 0, 0, so where I usually keep it down the middle, 0, 0, 0 when I do all the speakers, whilst mastering this speaker is more pronounced, and I think that's the plus of this speaker, that the pronunciation and the mids on this speaker are so clear that I can check what the PreSonus have done. The PreSonus, again, of extremely good speakers to have, but this has that sort of, it adds having those and having this together, and that's why I'm going to keep those, is because it gives that level of crispiness and check. You can check the highs and what needs a bit more tweaking, what needs a little bit more EQing, so the little tweaks that you do at the end, these are best for. So they're not to make music, they're to check your mix once you get your track to a certain level. There we go, I got through it. I got through what I wanted to say. Exactly, that's the reason why I'm gonna keep this speaker where it is, and I'm gonna set it up and try and use it, even though they're a bit tatty. Again, that low end, that chuffing, I've written an email to Yamaha to check if that is just something because of the age of the speaker. Is it already past its sort of, you know, usage where the parts have been used so much that they rattle about and, you know, and produce that rattling sound? Or is it just normal for these speakers to do that? The HS7s, I don't know about, again, I don't know about the HS5s or the HS8s because I have not heard them, but these ones have a port chuff. If any of you out there have heard these speakers and separated, again, I'll stress, once you separate the kick and the bass and you add volume, the chuffing only occurs then. It's not within, once you have the whole track playing and you pump up the volume, you don't, you can barely hear that chuffing. So you won't hear that stuff when it's playing out the full track. So if you separate those kick and bass line, and if you have that speaker, separate that, and please get back to me if you hear the port chuffing and the woofer rattling. So please tell me if you do have those speakers. Please tell me, and I'll be grateful to know that if it's just this speaker or something else. With that in mind, thank you for watching. I will be using these speakers, like I say, and yeah, thanks, and see you in the next video.